That was too close. You were almost a
6
sandwich.
You're right.
Welcome to part 2 of the Little Nightmares video featuring Little Nightmares 2. This one takes the creep factor of Little Nightmares 1 and amps it up. From the settings to the enemies, everything is
16 times
weirder and more horrifying than the first. It also has some gameplay elements that are
16 times
more frustrating than the first, but you win some, you lose some. My intro from the first video pretty much stands for this one as well. Same devs, Tarsier, same publisher, Bandai Namco, but a whole new nightmare. So let's go ahead and dive into Little Nightmares 2, Electric Boogaloo. The first thing we see when starting the game is the eye, something that was also prevalent on the mall. This installment has made me think a bit more on this relief, this symbol. Further into the game, like close to the very end, we'll see the eye in the center of a triangle, or rather, a pyramid. If you're familiar with US currency, you've seen this before. One name for this is the Eye of Divine Providence, a symbol suggesting God's compassionate watchfulness over humanity. My point in mentioning it is that the eye in much the same way watches over those that reside in this nightmare world. However, it's warped. There's no compassion here, only malice. No one in this world experiences a good outcome. Life sucks here. More so for some than others, but suffering pain is the name of the game here. I have even more thoughts on the symbolism of this eye, but I'll save that for later when more information is available. In the present moment, we find our little bag-headed boy Mono in a forest. Nearby is a television that spends its last vestiges of energy before powering off. For now, that means nothing. In the future, well, we'll see. In any case, it does let us know that televisions are going to be very prominent throughout this game, as you can see by the amount of televisions in the forest that taper off into animal traps. Is this a commentary on how television, or rather escapism, can be a trap? Or am I looking too deep? So yeah, these woods be ominous, and gets more so as Mono proceeds forward and discovers the rotting remains of the dead, be that animal or human. More than likely both, as not only will we see copious amounts of animal pelts within the nearby house, but clearly we can see this gore bag with what is quite obviously human limbs sticking out. These woods are littered with traps just waiting to catch anything that dares move within them, including Mono, who comes close to meeting his end many times in this short journey from his starting point to this house. We got a ton of cages out here, really giving Long Arm Jim a run for his money, and inside reminds me of the Baker family residence. Yes, I've used that line before, and I will again in the future. It is the way of things. Anyway, it's in this house that we find an old, or I guess new friend. This little child that's playing with the music box on the other side of this door is a D-rain-coded 6. She'll be joining Mono on this journey for the most part, you know, after she gets over the shock of seeing him break down the door like this is The Shining or something. Still, it's better than her being trapped in here, because from the tally marks on the wall, it looks like she's been trapped down here for quite some time. A little over a month, it seems. I guess the hunter captured her and has been keeping her here for company, perhaps? She is a prisoner, make no mistake, and he isn't kind for letting her live. But I think there's a loneliness the hunter has that has made him keep her around, and maybe even why the hunter has such eclectic tastes? Poorly taxidermied bodies are set in scenes, much like you would do for animals. There's a family sitting at the dining room table, and a grandmother in the attic in front of a window, as if she's enjoying the breeze and the sunlight. If there were any. It's almost like a life-size dollhouse in a way. But why really has the hunter chosen to do this? The simple answer is, because he wants to. It of course can be seen as a form of escapism in itself, which we will see in various forms throughout this game. But the things about these monsters is that they have no real ambition or thought even. It's all just instinct-driven actions. And the hunter's instinct is to hunt and kill and create lifelike scenes out of stuffing and skin, apparently. Well, that's not completely right. I think there are some vestiges of emotion or memory deep deep within these monsters. It's just that they're whispers amongst screams, hardly noticeable and easily missed. Anyway, once Six realizes that she's gonna need help and has no other choice than to trust Mono, she relents and beckons him over to help with the attic door. After some hopping about, the two must sneak by the man of the house, aka the Hunter. The most notable features about him is the burlap sack he wears over his head with a single giant eye hole in it, the lantern he carries, and the double-barrel shotgun that he will use in an attempt to blast Mono and Six away at any and every chance. Much like the janitor, he is like a hound in pursuit of prey. He will not stop until he successfully deals with the two children, or is dealt with himself. Considering there is much more game to be had after this, I think you can guess how this Hunter's story ends. This was but the beginning, as now they're on their way to not the City of Dreams,
Night City!
but the City of Nightmares. The Pale City.
Ooh, I love this town!
The city's in shambles, the buildings are crumbling and falling apart, the streets are torn asunder, and the people aren't faring any better either. As they wash ashore, a TV can be found with some sort of glitched figure standing in front of it. Mono can interact with these glitched remains by grabbing them, in which case his body will seem to glitch as well for a moment. More of these remains can be found throughout the Pale City and may be the remnants of children that were snatched away to the central pillar of this city, the signal tower. For what purpose this would serve, we're not sure, but for now, as the two make their way through the gloomy streets and into the various buildings in ill repair, we'll start to see clothing just lying around, looking as if the people were wearing them were raptured right out of them. But September's passed, and there's no salvation for the people of this land. Whatever happened to them is nothing divine nor sublime. Now, while all of the televisions we've passed so far have been broken or without power, that doesn't mean they all are. And Mono will happen upon one of these that seems to have some sort of strange pull that affects the bag-headed boy. As if hypnotized, he approaches the TV and places his hand upon it, then somehow tunes the picture of the hallway until it's just right before being pulled into it. As he heads toward the door in slow motion, he's suddenly pulled back to reality by Six. To be sure, she did him a favor. Nothing good ever lies behind that all-seeing eye. Having done so, the spell is broken, and with no time to contemplate these odd happenings, they make their way to the school grounds. They do take a few moments to play around, they are children after all, but soon it's back to business. In these halls of what should be learning, only lurks chaos, pure chaos. The children here aren't really children. They're just abysmal facsimiles created to fill the void, and they have the worst of the worst traits possible. They're wild and violent, not only towards Mono and Six, but also to each other. After Six is captured by the children whom had set up an ambush, Mono sees firsthand just how bad they can get.
This is Sparta!
They've even gone so far as to set up booby traps for any unsuspecting individual to run into, just for shiggles and giggles. However, they are not the worst thing this school from hell holds. No, there is a monster here that even these bullies are fearful of, and that is the teacher. So far, out of all the monsters I've seen from both the first and second game, she is the creepiest one of all. She walks with a stilted gait and towers over the bullies as they sit quietly in their desks, head down, not wanting to incur her wrath. After all, we can see the evidence of what happens to those whom catch her attention. But that's not the worst part. She can stretch her neck beyond obscene proportions, making her look like a snake with a ghastly face. And if Mono catches her attention, she'll chase him with her weird-ass stretchy neck and grab him within her teeth. All I gotta say about it is kill it with fire! This is where I'll mention the combat aspect of the game. Although combat is a very loose term for what it is. Timing is key. Make sure to swing whatever weapon Mono has before the enemy can jump on him and proceed to beat and or strangle him. When attacking the bullies, he pretty much caves their heads in, but as you can see, it's just porcelain or clay with nothing inside. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're out of commission forever. After all, there are many bullies running around with half their heads missing. Regardless, fighting isn't always gonna work, especially not with a room full of them at full tilt madness. Thus, he has to disguise himself by wearing one of their heads. What did I say about Texas Chainsaw Massacre? In the next area, Mono uses his brain to open a door and sneaky sneaks his way through the science lab while creepy long-necked Lukowski stuffs frogs into jars and messes with the anatomy dummy. Seriously, I don't know why there's so many Fallout/Bethesda references. Maybe it's because they decided to once again update a 10-year-old game and screw with the mods that actually make the game worth playing? I don't know, it could be that, it could be something else. But anyway.
Who's laughing now?
She's doing all the things a teacher would do in order to teach her students about said subjects. But it's just going through the motions with no real intent to teach nor learn. Again, it's mostly just a form of instinct. After dying to traps multiple times, Mono finally finds Six strung up by her heels. He easily deals with the bullies and frees her, none too gracefully. Still, Six seems to be okay, so no harm, no foul. Moving on, they smartly use a piano to break through the floor, to which Six will run along its keys in order to distract this odd fake child, whom is mashing a key into a dissected frog's stomach. This is what happens when you live off a diet of glue and magic markers. Don't do drugs, kids. Or do. Whatever, I'm not your mom. Now that Six is with Mono, he no longer has to fight alone. Just as he was about to bash this one's head in, Six jumps on it and shows it what for. Mono looks at her in concern, but bro, you bashed their heads in. Don't throw stones in glass houses, bag boy. Now, they're almost out of the school, but they have one last section to traverse. On a positive note, they get to hear some actually skilled piano playing. As monstrous and creepy as the teacher is, she knows how to tickle the ivories. This is probably her preparing for a music class that will never happen. But credit where credit is due. Mono will have to time his moves to her stop and go playing. Yet another form of red light, green light. I keep telling y'all, it's the devil's game. Once Six is crossed safely and Mono takes his turn, the teacher is alerted to their presence, and even though they scamper into the vents, that doesn't stop her pursuit. She forces her way through, aiming to bite the little ones. But if they're quick enough, they eventually break through and end up outside, causing the teacher to lose their trail. No longer seeing her quarry, she retreats back into the vents. I like to imagine that when she's retracting her head, it gets stuck in the vents. That's a little headcanon of mine. After navigating the drenched alleyways and finding shelter, Six finds her iconic yellow raincoat. And now she's that familiar girl we all know and love. Out of the school and out of the rain, they find themselves in a hospital. Hospitals are known for being some of the creepiest locations in video games, and that holds true for Little Nightmares too. A whole new slew of disturbing sights await the two in this hospital, asylum, Frankenstein's castle of a building. Before we can really get into those horrors, however, Six will once again have to rescue Mono from the jaws of oblivion. Something tells me that Mono has some things he's gonna have to eventually reconcile with. However, horror waits for no man, and Mono must temporarily separate from Six in order to navigate these prosthetic limb-filled corridors, and runs into one of the Addams family. This animated severed hand acts like a face hugger and will lunge at Mono when given the opportunity. It takes a couple of good whacks to put it down, which makes it slightly more dangerous than the bullies. When Mono rejoins Six, she's busy entertaining herself by breaking the fingers on a prosthetic hand. I don't really have a defense for Six here. That's some psychotic behavior. But, you know, then again, boredom is a bitch. After entering the asylum section of the hospital, Mono once again has to strike out on his own so that the two can obtain the fuses to open this door. And here lies the most frustrating part of the game. Now, some people enjoyed this part, and I can see why. I would have too. You see, Mono has to navigate the darkness with his flashlight, while these prosthetic-limbed mannequin people attempt to chase and grab him. Shining the light on them stops them in their tracks, and darkness allows them to move. Sounds simple, right? Well, not so much when the flashlight mechanics for controller are wonky as hell. For those of you who managed it just fine, I don't know, you got weird hands or something. I died so many times just because of how odd the flashlight movement works on controller that I eventually just switched to mouse and keyboard and managed to actually make it out of this literal nightmare. After employing those advanced flashlight tactics, Mono will find himself in a hallway that suddenly erupts with grasping hands coming at him all which way. And in a similar scene to Little Nightmares 1, they will break out and begin chasing him. He'll have to climb up a vent in order to escape, landing him safely in the showers. That's probably the only time showers and safe will ever be used in the same sentence. Anywho, there's a body in the bathtub surrounded by flies and whatever this yellow stuff is. I honestly have no clue what it could be. Like, what is this? What is this? Using a bar of soap, Mono can unlock the cell door where a previously inactive mannequin dude sits in a wheelchair. Mono shines the light upon the creature and must hold him there while he pushes the wheelchair to the door. Or at least that's what I wasted time doing at first. It didn't occur to me that I could just switch the light on and make this not only possible, but much easier on myself. Sometimes I'm just eat up with a dumbass. After one more tedious sweat-inducing gauntlet, Mono is free of those grabby hands and comes into possession of the fuse they need to leave this hellhole. After dealing with a number of things relatives, they find a room with masks hanging on the wall. They're all different shapes and sizes, but all equally grotesque. These masks are what the people of the mall wore. I wonder now if perhaps the guests were also wearing masks of their own, and if this is where they got them. A nearby clamor catches our attention. The doctor of this horror spittle is crawling on the ceiling like a fat larva with limbs. He skitters across the ceiling to and fro, making the building rumble as he does, looking for the correct limbs for his latest undead mannequin creation. Hiding under the beds when he's on your trail won't work for this guy. He'll pick the bed up and grab Mono, so it's best to just never be seen by this guy if at all possible. There are many cold storage rooms filled with bodies here, more than enough for his Frankenstein-esque shenanigans. However, I will say that he does at least wash his hands. Kind of. Ugh. Mono will come upon a curious sight of what seems to be a still living human in this ward of death. This patient behind the curtain is a bit of a mystery. I doubt the doctor is still tending to patients these days, but maybe he is. Perhaps this is the one lone real patient left in this hospital that he desperately clings on to keeping alive. Or maybe this is him coaxing one of his mannequin human monsters to life. After all, it's pretty obvious that a human body is used in these creations. There are even some that still have their heads attached, I think. In any case, Mono doesn't give a damn and will turn the life-giving machines off just to use as a distraction. The doctor freaks and scurries to help his patient. While he's busy with that, it gives Six and Mono enough time to gather yet another fuse. Our time with the doctor isn't quite up yet though, as we need to have another chase sequence. Everyone gets a chase sequence here. Tarsier is very generous. Mono must be agile and quick to avoid being crushed by the falling beddings, and lures the doctor into the retort, where he is flambéed to ash and bone. How very grim fairy tales of them, Hansel and Gretel. That's 2 baddies dealt with, and if they're following the same formula as the first game, all we have left is the big boss. But that doesn't mean there aren't other dangers in between. This signal tower is doing something to the people here. The ones that weren't yanked straight out of their clothes and taken for some as of yet unknown purpose have been left here in their insanity. It seems that Mono isn't the only one to be affected by the television. However, it isn't quite the same. The people here are mindless zombies and only seem to care for watching TV, even if it's just pure static. As long as it's on, they will stand there and stare at it until they no longer can, or until the power's cut. But it isn't just the TV that draws them in so intensely. The TV is merely an object in which the signal tower can broadcast its brainwashing waves upon the masses. As we can see, some of them don't even bother with the television. They stand out on their roofs to look upon the tower itself. Some of them falling to the ground below as if the pull is so great they just can't help themselves but try to get a little closer, oblivious or uncaring of the danger. The signal tower provides all you could ever need. It only requires one thing: you. There's also something different about these people compared to the hunter, teacher, doctor, and the bullies. They have no faces. Where their face would be seems to be sunken in and folded in on itself. There are no eyes, no mouth, no nothing but this butthole-looking space left. The signal tower's power seems to be corruptive by nature. Or maybe it's just sucking every scrap of life it can out of the viewers until they're nothing but withered husks with no thought, no will, and eventually no function. Aside from the viewers, some of the buildings themselves seem to be an enemy. The dilapidated structure will crack and fall, with Six and Mono being a little too slow to escape it.
That was too close. You were almost a
Six.
sandwich.
You're right.
But the two make it out alive, only for Mono to be hypnotized by the television again. And this time, Six isn't quick enough to reach him before he reaches the door, opening the gates for his downfall with his own hands. For behind the door is the Thin Man. Six finally manages to pull Mono out and desperately urges him to get a move on. But Mono is so stunned and confused that Six will dash away without him while the Thin Man crawls out of the TV like Samara in a business suit. Time seems to warp and slow around the Thin Man, making movements slower than normal, much like in a dream where it feels like your feet are in cement blocks or something. Still, he pushes on and finds Six hiding under the table. Mono dives under the bed to hide, but unfortunately Six's hiding spot is compromised, and when she reaches out for Mono, he cowers in fear and allows her to be snatched up, leaving behind glitched remains before they disappear. Mono knows he messed up, and is determined to make it right and rescue Six. For the moment, he can't just follow her where she's went, but now that he's unlocked the door, he's unlocked some of his latent power. Interacting with TVs that are turned on will allow him to travel TV to TV, sort of like teleporting, if teleporting included traveling through a fleshy tube. During his solo travels, he'll come across various places that would seem to have held some kind of function, like a mailroom and even storefronts. However, I believe these are just more warped likenesses of real-world places. Just like the school and the hospital, they never held any true purpose. They just exist as a bizarre facade. Anyway, after ziplining across the gap to another house, he finds more of the faceless, aka the viewers. In order to lure the creature away from the TV, he has to turn another one on, then turn the previous one off. This will cause the viewer to run for the next working television, like a caffeine addict to some fine dark roasted Colombian coffee beans. However, there are times where there will be no television to save Mono, and he must resort to more drastic measures, as these viewers turn very hostile if they have no signal to pacify them. Electrocution. He electrocutes them. However, he does run into a bit of a pickle. There are a couple of viewers staring at the TV he needs to use in order to get into the store, and even more are passively viewing behind a fence. Mono is gonna have to turn off their entertainment in order to make his way inside the TV store. However, these viewers turn very hostile, seemingly even more so than normal, as they will not only break through the fence, but also the glass window to get at Mono. The TVs momentarily pacify them, but in their exuberance they continue to advance and cause the whole shelf to fall, destroying the TVs in the process. Mono must dash to the only working TV left in order to escape the faceless horde. After traveling to another TV in another building, Mono will find Six banging on the screen of a different TV from the other side. Mono attempts to free her and comes close to doing so, but the Thin Man has other ideas and snatches Six away once again before emerging to chase Mono. He seems in no hurry to catch the boy, but that won't stop him from doing so if Mono is too slow. It feels really tense when you can see this gangly tall man walking down a hallway while you struggle for escape. Mono manages it, of course. We still have more game to play. He slides down drenched rooftops and lands on a derailed train. There is but a moment of respite before the Thin Man is back again. Talk about dogged pursuit, this guy does not give up. After a slow-mo chase scene, Mono makes it to the other train cart and decouples them, making for a very loud getaway. After that little sequence, the remote control is toast, which means no more TV hopping. But there'll be no need for that for where Mono's going. The glitched remains of Six will make another appearance, walking along the train tracks, guiding Mono to where he needs to go, which is the final face-off with the telestatic Thin Man. It's obvious that he was always going to have to deal with this guy. He was never going to stop chasing Mono. Perhaps he even wanted to drive Mono here, near the signal tower, in order for this very thing to happen. Mono takes his mask off. He gathers his newly found power and holds his hand up. The Thin Man mirrors his stance. Then Mono must mirror the Thin Man's movements or risk losing it all. The hand turning is reminiscent of tuning the TVs from earlier. Is the Thin Man trying to show Mono the way? Does he want to pass these powers on to him? I think he does. The force of their battle causes buildings to crumble and collapse while the signal tower stands strong as the backdrop to this epic duel. Mono is successful in the end, as was designed, and puts down the Thin Man. Then uses his epic powers to manipulate space and time, not just moving the buildings themselves, but the reality around them, quite literally bringing the signal tower to him. The tower doors open and welcome him in, as if this is where he belongs. He's been here before, in this hallway, in front of this door, and now we can finally see what lies behind. In this even more otherworldly dimension, gravity seems to be optional. Time and space are warped in this signal tower interior, making it possible for Mono to seemingly inhabit two spaces at once. There's a method to this madness, however. All you gotta do is follow the music. This will lead Mono to a monstrified Six playing with a giant version of the music box we first found her with. On the wall you can see the warped portrait of a girl with her face scratched out, looking just like the one back in Little Nightmares 1 aboard the mall. However, it was a different portrait that had the eye scratched out in the lady's room. Is this perhaps a portent for the future? I did say that particular portrait was the lady as a child. Mayhaps this is foretelling how Six will snuff out the lady and gain her power. After all, while this might be a sequel in terms of time it was released, it is most certainly a prequel within the game's timeline. Monster Six isn't aggressive to Mono right now. She only cares for her music box, the one thing she enjoyed in this awful, no-good world. However, she does seem to kind of remember Mono, as she'll respond to his calls by scooting closer to him, and will even attempt to share her precious toy, which makes what Mono is about to do so much more difficult. In order to free Six from this form and this signal tower, he has to destroy what is most precious to her. Seeing this as an act of betrayal because she's not in her right mind, she responds with anger, lashing out at Mono for his perceived antagonism. The tower itself seems to morph with her change in mood, shaking and crumbling, revealing the ugly truth beneath the facade. She'll give up momentarily, and in a mirror to when they first met, Mono must free an axe and chop his way into the room where she guards her music box. He can't just run straight for it. 6 will knock his lights out if he tries. Instead, he'll have to make use of those warping doors and call out to her, luring her away from the music box. When he strikes again, he's transported somewhere else and he will once again use the axe, which brings him right back to 6. Each time they do this song and dance, the interior breaks down, revealing more and more flesh bubbling up beneath the cracks, reinforcing the idea that this signal tower is actually just a wall of flesh and eyeballs mimicking the form of a building. It seems very Lovecraftian. Is it possible that the people whom were sucked into the TVs became part of this tower? That this is a macabre amalgamation of the flesh of all its victims melded together? Disturbing if true. The music box is almost done for, much like 6 seems to be. With one more hit, the box is destroyed, and 6 is back to her normal self. But the building is now done for. The true creature beneath is bursting through the seams. Bubbly flesh and eyeballs close in upon them as they run to find an exit. Any exit. However, this time 6 isn't helping Mono scramble along. Even as he falls behind, she pushes ever forward. She does hesitate at the exit, and even catches his hand when he jumps, seemingly on instinct rather than with any real thought. However, she doesn't pull him up. And after agonizingly long moments, she lets go. This is not 6 being petty. This is not 6 getting her revenge. This is 6 being controlled by her shadow self. This is the signal tower's influence. It has a plan for both of them, and she will follow it, whether she actively wants to or not. And as Mono falls into the depths of this monstrosity, she makes her way to the exit as a very familiar tune begins to play. Something fundamental was changed in 6, leaving her a different girl than she was before the Thin Man took her. That girl no longer exists. And Mono... Poor Mono finds himself on a lake of that bubbling flesh and makes his way to the lone chair sitting atop a mound. He then sits and accepts his fate. We watch as he begins to transform. The godlike powers that this flesh tower wields allows for rapid passage of time within its own pocket dimension, allowing Mono to grow up and grow old until he becomes what he was running from. The Thin Man. It seems just like 6, Mono could not escape the cycle and was always doomed to become part of it. And that's what all this is, a cycle, constantly repeating itself over and over again with fresh new replacements to keep the misery machine going. I think this signal tower is the source of all the corruption of this world. It possesses godlike powers and has most certainly greatly influenced the Pale City. Earlier, I mentioned the Eye of Divine Providence and how this eye could be something like that, only wrong and corrupted. The eyes we see everywhere throughout the games could be a representation of the signal tower's force, or will that's always observing and influencing the world behind the scenes. I mean, look at this flesh creature that actually makes up the signal tower beast. It's covered in eyes. And this door inside the signal tower has that eye inside the pyramid. If that isn't pointing to this beast being the reason for all of the eye reliefs and symbols everywhere, then I don't know what is. It's said that the mall is the most normal and safest place in Nowhere, which is the name of the world of Little Nightmares. And I kind of agree. As bad as the mall can be, it's nowhere near as bad as the Pale City, and I'm betting many other places we haven't seen. It seems to be located pretty far from the city and only has a couple televisions on board that are hidden in storage and aren't used, which keeps the signal tower's influence down to a minimum. Thus, it's become a safe haven for those fleeing the tower's corruption. You know, until 6 came along and wrecked their shit. I also want to point out that these glitching remains that represent the children that were taken by the Thin Man like 6 was, are the monsters we've encountered. At least some of them. Going by what happened to 6 when she was captured, she was turned into a monster. She was saved from that fate because Mono was there. However, the other children didn't have a Mono to save them. Perhaps they were corrupted into the monsters that have given Mono and 6 so much grief. It's already established that the signal tower basically melts your mind, reducing you down to instinct and instinct alone, and that's all the monsters really have, warped instinct. Children like Six and Mono seem to be the lucid dreamers of the realm. They have the power to control the reality around them, unlike most of the other children. However, unlike in our actual dreams, they can't just wake up. They're stuck in this warped world with its warped rules, and in the end become just another tool for the cycle. Whether they want to or not doesn't matter. There are some things you just can't change. But I feel like there's more at play here than just the signal tower. I feel like there's gotta be some other kind of power in this world. After all, the mall exists because hunger exists. The signal tower exists because the need for escapism exists. The only way these two needs would no longer exist would be if humanity either lived in a perfect world or ceased to exist altogether. The Knower takes these aspects of human nature and twists them, like it does with everything else. It's like a funhouse mirror of our world that isn't very fun, where the people like eating children and TV monsters eat your brains. Unfortunately, this is all just speculation and theory crafting. We don't really know, nor will we ever know, what the whole truth is to this world of Little Nightmares, considering Tarsier is no longer the arbiters of this franchise. But in any case, I love the idea of the signal tower. I love that it's actually some flesh creature that has the power to manipulate time, space, and even perception. That's just cool. I love the world of Little Nightmares. Tarsier really made something awesome here. It's just a shame we'll never get to see more of it from them. However, we do have Reanimal coming up, and I think it's going to be something fantastic if the demo is anything to go by. Seriously, if you like Little Nightmares, go play the Reanimal demo. You know what, even if you didn't like Little Nightmares, go check it out anyway. It's not quite the same, so maybe you'll end up liking it. Or maybe you won't, I don't know. So that's going to be the end of the Little Nightmares series. Thank you for joining me on this adventure through nowhere. And thank you for watching all the way till the end. You are the GOAT. And I want to give a special thanks to my Morning Through Midnight GOATs on Patreon and YouTube memberships. In Water Ending, Pearl9907, Isha, Michael Hamilton, and Mascabre. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much I appreciate you. You are awesome. Pretend I ran the spiel about liking and subbing and all that, and stay tuned for my next video, which will be on Labyrinth of the Demon King. I'm really looking forward to making that video. And I'll see you again on the Midnight GOAT.